Hey guys, it's Julie here. How is everyone doing? I hope things have been going well and smoothly for you guys. Today I would like to speak on this topic that a friend of mine sent me to know my thoughts on, actually. It's a very interesting and important topic for me because it concerns the imposed shaving of young African girls' heads in public or government owned schools. I went to a government school towards the later part of my secondary school years, and so I know some of these things firsthand. But yeah, this tweet was attached to this picture, which also brought back memories of those years, and I thought this tweet said a lot, yet so little. A solid tweet, in my opinion. So let's talk about it. In this picture, you can see a classroom of teenage African girls in school uniforms. They are all bald, every one of them. I believe they are South African, but this is a phenomenon that cuts across so many African countries, and many are starting to wonder if it has a sinister underlying issue when you peer deeply into it. Now, for those who don't know, yes, this is a real thing, and it still happens in many government owned schools in African countries. Boys and girls alike are put on strict dress codes, and for the girls, it involves cutting their hairs as close as possible to the skin. When it comes to hair for Africans, it's usually deeper than just hair. No one views our hair as unprofessional more than us. There are so many rules, especially when you're younger and in school, about how to present your hair to make it more digestible, more presentable. Boys with full or long hairs or locks are frowned at and called all sorts of irresponsible. Sometimes they even get treated like criminals. One thing African parents don't like is tattoos. Another thing is a male with hair that grows higher than 2 centimeters. Men have been denied wives because of how they presented themselves to the family. The lower your hair, the higher the chances of the bride's mother actually liking you. I think Africans' relationship with hair is very interesting. We have a lot of unacknowledged and unrecognized trauma. Young girls get punished for just wearing their hair as is to school. It is simply not done. You couldn't leave your hair quote unquote undone. I remember writing my senior WAEC and I had my hair in a little bun. I had to go take a passport outside and I was denied because they wanted me to go back and put my hair in plaits or do something with my hair. My hair literally looked like this. In many private schools in Nigeria, there are weekly rosters for the hairstyles girls are required to do before coming to school. Coming to school with your hair loose and unbraided is almost a criminal offense. Maybe if you were, ill that week or something, you'd be granted a pass. But on a norm, I get the issue of uniformity. Most schools are big on keeping their students looking nearly identical, but I've noticed wearing your hair without putting it in some sort of braided style will get you worse punishment than if you got the wrong hairstyle made that week. It's just so much better for you if you keep your hair away. I remember being young and every Saturday I had to make my way to the salon with a little bag holding essentials like hair cream, cotton comb, and any hair accessories I'd be using that week. It was like I was walking on a short pier off a cliff where grinning alligators were waiting for me in the sea below. Most times, having my hair made was a physically draining experience. There was a lot of pain even though my hair was relaxed then. The salon was where you got to see other kids your age crying and writhing as the hairdresser's professional fingers worked deftly to put braid patterns in her hair. Culture is beautiful, right? I think so. I love the vast ways African hair have been styled through the years. I'm obsessed with observing ancient African hairstyles and patterns. I've also often wondered if the pain factor is something post-colonialism brought, seeing as we lost a lot of knowledge of how to handle our own hair and had a lot of learned shame concerning it. I mean, I look at these beautiful portraits and wonder if these results came with days of being unable to work your neck properly and have a decent night's sleep. I'm an advocate for making the black girl's hair experience as painless, joyful, positive, and freeing as possible. Now, when it comes to the imposed baldness on teenage girls in public school, there is this lack of freedom of choice, which also comes with its own issues and meanings. It's what we will be discussing today. Now, I want to go through common excuses or reasons that people may argue that this practice is important. Yes, people do indeed argue that this practice is important. You might hear excuses such as, oh, this is done so that girls can focus on their studies instead of frivolous things like hair and trends. You also hear, so they don't focus on appearance and attracting the opposite sex. And then you hear, oh, it's so they don't get adopted. And I don't even have to tell you why that excuse is wrong. The only reason I've heard so far that holds an ounce, just an ounce, of logic is that the shaved heads provide a sense of uniformity. It's true. I mean, look at this. Aren't they nearly identical? Very uniform. Very, very uniform. Also, because government-owned schools are heavily subsidized, they are usually packed full with children from middle or lower class. There are quite a lot of children attending these schools, and so it may be hard to control what kind of hairstyles they show up in if uniformity is to be kept. But even that excuse doesn't quite hold water because I've seen cases where white or biracial kids attended such schools and they weren't made to cut their hairs, or the hair policy wasn't as strict when it came to them for some reason. So it's like, what happened to this uniformity that you were also passionate about 3.5 seconds ago? you know, there is this claim that they want all children to appear equal. But when you can clearly see the bias, it reads like that quote from Animal Farm. Except switch the animals with children. All children are equal, but some are more equal than the others. Is it that the non-black kids have the ability to multitask, but the black girls don't? Because having hair just makes them, unable to focus on their education. Now, let's get down to the nitty-gritty of the real reasons why African girls have to shave their heads to get an education. At least in my opinion. Now keep in mind that my opinion is usually right. With post-colonialism came new ways of reasoning and living and just being amongst Africans. Given the heavy role hair played during some of the most trying periods for the continent, the aftermath is one which effects we still feel till today. But just to recap a few ways colonialism changed the way black hair was perceived. Number 1. Black women were made to cover their hair that were once so high and proud and flamboyant, an outlet for creativity and storytelling. They were made to feel shame for it and cover it because the wives of slave owners feared they would attract their husbands with it. Number 2. Black women were punished and dehumanized for having hairs that it ultimately shifted how they thought of their hairs. Number 3. There was a definite shift from how Africans took care of their hair when they did it for pleasure and culture to how they did it when they did for survival. From using ornaments and handmade soaps to style and cleanse their hairs, they had to use whatever they could get their hands on hair that they were punished for having. Number 4. With the arrival of white people came this new outlook on life, and there was a paradigm of what was normal, aka white, and what was animalistic, aka being black. Emulating whiteness at all costs is a mentality that still plagues the African society till today. Leave it to the average African. If a white man says something is bad, it doesn't matter if his whole ancestral line swore by it. It was bad now. It also shows up in the preferential treatment of white people in African societies in this day and age. You could jump queues, get treated like royalty, have things made easier for you for no other reason other than you were white. Even if you're a peasant in your own country. It's very embarrassing to say the least, but here we are in big 2024, still living with the after effects of British imperialism. Schools in African societies were a byproduct of colonialism. What began as missionary schools spread out through the country with a mission to educate in this new language and style. Government schools are post-colonial agencies. Now, if there is one thing that changed in this period, it's the perception of African hair. After years upon years of... Now, what would the opposite of word of affirmation be? Probably word of defamation. Yeah, so after the long period of that, if there was one thing we learned, it was to lose the sense of pride and being that we once had with our hairs. Actually, I don't think we lost it. I think it's actively being suppressed in many ways. I think that what makes this imposed head shaving among teenage girls sinister is the active fight against reclaiming lost pride. Years upon years of being gaslit would make it seem like there is no pride to be had with what our actual hairs look like. But if our beauty and creativity wasn't a threat, we wouldn't have been made to dissociate from it. Learning to see our hair as inferior happened. Also came the practice of humbling African women. Among many cultures, and especially African culture, hair plays an important role. Hair is a symbol of femininity and a way for the feminine to express and beautify. When a woman values making things beautiful with her hands, it gives her a healthy and much needed outlet for her feminine energy. It's why majorly women were into mat weaving, bead making, hot decoration, pottery, things like that. The learned hair shame that came with slavery till this day still needs reinforcement. Our shame, after all, makes good business. When you don't like something about yourself, you keep trying to change it. So you buy and buy certain products to fill up something missing while massaging the egos of people and institutions made to make you feel mentally inferior. They will tell you your hair is ugly, not because it is, but because they need you to believe that. In my uni days, I remember almost being denied entry into an exam hall because I had my hair in a puff. My hair was quite neater than many girls with relaxed hair who didn't even bother to comb me that day, mind you. But because it was thicker, I guess, I was to go, quote unquote, do something about it. Now, I won't say names, but if you know the uni, you know. It's things like these, institutional and interpersonal things like these, that attempt to humble you. If young girls were never given a chance to develop a relationship with their hair, they never get to understand or like it. But it's like you're fresh out of the womb with a relaxer in your hair. I find that the elderly Africans are the worst with these, and I feel like this is because they are the closest point of contact to the colonial period. They can't remember a time when, quote unquote, untamed hair wasn't bad. They don't want to hear about a man with locks, and they don't want their daughters experimenting with afros. When you take away young African girls' choice of what to do with their hair, you create this weird relationship with their hair. It makes many of them eager to try things that should otherwise just be a passing trend. Look to foreign hair for solutions. And this is where I retract a statement I'd made in a previous video. I was a bit short-sighted actually. It's the video titled, Ladies, Maybe It's Time to Put Down the Lace Front, where I was talking about this statement that forcing black girls to shave make them turn to wigs for solution. I remember saying that I didn't think that was so, that I thought it was the relaxer. But honestly, I definitely see the correlation now. I mean, that's the whole point of this video. It was kind of glaring, but I unfortunately dismissed that as an option. So yes, I do agree with the poster who said that. Our shame is learned. When you make young girls shave their heads as a requirement for learning, you instill in them that beauty and brains are not mutually exclusive. Are we surprised to still hear people use that outdated term, beauty with brains, in big 2024, and have the audacity to think they snapped? There is a need to humble black girls, especially with hair, that is really sinister given the history of that practice. Some young girls in African households had their heads shaved as a punishment to make them unattractive to the opposite sex if the mother felt she was being too, quote-unquote, fast. One of the reasons for this imposed shaving of young girls that I've heard is that they don't want the girls attracting boys at that age. For us to fully see the disconnect, we have to examine how the white and biracial girls were not made to cut their hairs. I remember back in school, we had an Arab girl who had super curly hair. Now, in my school, she still had to cut her hair, but I remember the rules weren't as strict when it came to her. One particular incident that stands out to me is how one day, a teacher came in to inspect haircuts to see who to scold because their hair was getting longer and drawing concerns. Oh my gosh, that means it had exceeded its 2.5 centimeters length mark. Now, as haircuts were being inspected, this Arab girl obviously had longer grown out hair. It was thicker than what was acceptable. But I remember the teacher turning on one of the other girls and saying to her, "You have to cut this your hair tomorrow. You know your hair is not like Halima's. Halima can leave her hair. It's very soft. Your own looks like a sponge. Our type of hair is not even good when it's full." Then she giggled and went on inspecting. Now, this was a woman who had accepted the hair shame. She had on a bad wig, of course, like most female teachers did. Well, she felt it was completely normal to say the things she just said. Many other cases of the preferential treatment have been shared. And so it begs the question, what makes the non-blacks different? How are they capable of learning with hair and staying unsexualized? The Jezebel trope is an image associated with black women. It is one where black women were portrayed as lewd, promiscuous, and tempting in the media, while their white counterparts were portrayed as chaste, innocent, and modest. Of course, it's a senseless racist rhetoric, but one that still has people in a chokehold, even if they don't know it. Now, when it comes to hair, I believe there are hairstyles inappropriate for kids, but just because I don't think children have the endurance for the pain their scalps are put through in the process. And of course, I think wigs are inappropriate for kids because it can mess with their self-esteem. But many people are degenerate. They attack what young black girls do with their hairs because they fear it will make them look too grown, too adult, which is sickening. I think one of the after effects of colonial times is associating elaborate hairstyles on black women with seduction. Many don't even know why they think that way, but that's indoctrination for you. Hair or lack of it does not decrease sexual assault in any way, so that point doesn't even make the cut. Misogyny says, her hair and beauty will stand in the way of her seeking knowledge. Let's humble her. Internalized racism says, her hair will make her look like a slut. You can switch these around, they still work. The Halimas could have the freedom to do what they wanted with their hair, and the African girls' hair length had to be closely watched. So when they try to rationalize this, it doesn't fully add up because there are so many reasons why we reject our own hairs without fully realizing or acknowledging it. Age-old reasons that may have been inherited on why we feel the way we feel about our hair and beauty. And if many can have these hard, honest conversations, the change can begin to happen. So guys, this is the end of this video. I hope it provided insights on some things. If you have anything you'd like to add, I'd love to hear. Comments are very much appreciated, and also don't forget to like and share. There are links in the description leading to articles on these hair policies in different schools in different African countries. Do check them out if you want to know more about this. Also, if you have topics you'd like me to do commentary on, send it to the email on screen. It's buzzjulie@gmail.com, and I might get around to making a video about it. So, see you in my next one. Bye!